Hey, how's it going, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Thanks for tuning in. Today I'm going to be discussing my ghillie suit. This is something I made 3 years ago, but it's been a labor of love. Sometimes with a ghillie suit, you tear things, you got to modify things. So, there's constant upkeep with a ghillie suit, at least for me. What I did to make this ghillie suit is I used some existing camouflage digital woodland pants and top that I already had. I didn't go out and buy something brand new. I used something that I had for a while, and that's what I used to build off of. This is a two-piece ghillie suit. I got pants and top, and I'll show you some of the material that I used. Again, I used just some digital woodland pants and top, but I also used some of this mil-spec camouflage netting. Comes in a 5 foot by 8 foot sheet, and I would just cut pieces of this for whatever I'm looking to craft or make. I've used this type of mil-spec netting for some of my boonie hats and other ghillie hat creations I've made. I've also even used it on my new, one of my newest ghillie masks that I've made. And here's some other material I use. I use yarn. I don't use a lot of zip ties when securing stuff down. I've actually made a homemade needle that I use for crafting out of a paper clip. It has a very large eye on the end of it. I soldered it. I basically crafted my own needle. I've done that a couple times. It has a very large eye on it, so I can put yarn through that eye, even some microcord and some other kind of larger diameter threads, can go through the eye of that needle to help me secure some of my, ghillie crafting stuff that I want to, try and secure onto my ghillie suit. So again, what I use for this, just existing pants and top, mil-spec netting, some yarn, and I also use some shoe goo, which is really great, for ghillie suit crafting or ghillie crafting. Shoe goo, also Gorilla fabric glue works really well. I've also used on this ghillie suit some camouflage burlap. You can see it's camouflaged on one side, and the other side is just a natural color. I would also cut this into strips for what I would need it. A lot of times with a ghillie suit, just prepping your material takes a lot of time. So I had a much larger sheet of that camouflage burlap, but I cut a lot of that material into strips roughly about this length, a foot to 1.5 feet in length, roughly 1 inch to 1.5 inches wide. And I'll get to how I would secure that stuff. The first thing that I did with this, though, is I wanted to secure that mil-spec netting to the pants and the top, and that's what I did. So the first thing where I secured it, and I also have some other camouflage fabric. I have some digital woodland camouflage fabric. I also have some multi-cam fabric, but I used digital woodland for this. So got some other my camouflage fabric, and I'd roughly cut it in about a 2-inch wide strip. And what I was doing with that is I wanted something wide enough where I can put that mil-spec netting in between that fabric, sandwich that other camouflage fabric over the netting, and then secure it down with a sewing machine onto my either pants or top. The first thing I did was to secure that mil-spec netting right up around that collar area. You can kind of see some of that other fabric there, and it's sandwiched, this netting is sandwiched in between that fabric, and then it is sewn down all the way, up around that collar area. As you can see here, or I'll kind of show this. I have the netting on the back of this top, also on the back of my pants. There is some of the netting here on the front, and I've also used some of that digital digital camo fabric I have, sandwich that netting on a vertical strip, but also on a horizontal strip to secure it here to the front. It's also done that way on this side as well. a vertical strip of fabric with the netting sandwich in between, sewn down to secure it vertically there, but also horizontally here. I don't have any of that mil-spec netting kind of on my upper chest area, and it's not on my upper shoulders area either. It does cover my sleeves here, and I just took that fabric, cut it in a way to where it can kind of overlap, and one of the seams is right here on kind of my forearm area, and I used yarn to secure that mil-spec netting to itself with that yarn. And to have it cover my sleeve. It's also on this side. That seam runs right around, my forearm here as well. I have the netting. I've actually added on some of this netting onto the lower portion of my sleeve to where it would cover the top portion on my hand. I put some paracord on there so I can have it on my palms there. But I also added that netting so I can craft on it and break up even my hand area. So if I have a rifle, it really helps to break all that up. I did use some shoe glue in certain spots on the back, but not a whole lot on the top here. It's mainly secured down with that fabric, with the netting sandwich in between, and then sewn down to the top. The front of my ghillie top here, there's some netting, that mil-spec netting with some of my ghillie stuff I've attached to it, but I don't have a lot of that mil-spec netting up top. What you can see here, some of this moving stuff, even on my pants on the front. On my pants, I do not have any of that mil-spec netting at all on the front of it, because I don't want some of that netting on the front if I'm laying down, I'm on a prone position, or I'm crawling, and I don't want that to getting snagged up and caught on everything. So that's why I kind of limited some of that mil-spec netting onto the front of my ghillie suit. I have some of this other type of larger netting here, this camouflage netting. You can really cover, large areas, vehicles, and whatnot. But I would cut it into just tear it into smaller pieces. And here's a smaller piece of it. But I would take a smaller piece and basically I'd, just stick it onto the front. And how I've attached these smaller pieces of this type of netting is I just used shoe glue, and I would just put a dab on it and stick it on there, and it's really all that stuff is really stuck down well onto the front. That's again a modification I've done within the last few months, and it's really worked out very well for the front of my my ghillie suit here, and front of the top, front of the pants. I've also taken some of that netting as well. Where's that piece? There it goes. That would take, some other netting, little bigger pieces or whatnot. You can see it on here. It acts almost as a leafy type of material. But I would just cut a couple holes or pop a couple holes into there and treat it almost like a button. Have a couple of spots where I can put my yarn through one hole and then bring it out the other way, as I'm securing it down onto the netting. It's just creating buttons basically of material. Every once in a while these things do pop off, but it's really easy to secure down. But for the most part, they don't tear off and they stay where they're supposed to be. I have that kind of on the back here mixed in between. Let's see if I can show this. You can see it kind of where it's mixed in between. There's a piece, there's a green one, there's a brown one. You can kind of see where it's mixed in there. And I just secured that onto that mil-spec netting, treated them like buttons. And, but I also attached a lot of that burlap first. After securing that mil-spec netting onto my top, that's where I started to secure a lot of these camouflage burlap strips. How I would secure those is I would take the burlap strip and I would just fold over the end here, roughly 3 or 4 times, creating kind of a wad of material where I can, take my homemade needle and secure it onto the netting and, secure it down, kind of, hand sew it. And it's really, that stuff really stays anchored very well like that. Sometimes I'll do it straight. Sometimes I'd actually kind of take it and make it kind of put more of a triangle or double it up, I'd actually just do it like this. But I'm also going through this material and really kind of anchoring it down. Eventually these things kind of all pull apart. If you saw my rug here, I got sticks and stems and I got pieces of burlap all on the floor. And that's just what it does. This stuff kind of breaks down and it turns into what you can see here. It's worked very well for me. I can still attach real foliage to it and whatnot. So, again, once that big sheet of, that mil-spec netting goes all the way from the top of my collar here and it's all the way down, to the bottom. I'll kind of flip it over, but I have it secured with shoe goo also, so I can't really flip it up all the way. But you can kind of see where that's some of my hand sewing areas of a burlap strip. So these are just kind of things I've done. You got to kind of think out of the box sometimes, get creative, let your, artistic side come out. You got to get creative sometimes when creating a ghillie suit. So just kind of giving you some ideas of what I've done. I can get these pants off right now. Talk about those. Oh, here's there's a piece of sagebrush or something stuck in the ghillie suit. All right, so here's the pants, front of the pants, really no netting, and you can see some of that stuff that I've, some of that larger netting that I've secured down just with shoe goo. It's all just glued down onto the front just to have some movement and some texture. There's the back of it. You can see that mil-spec netting up there. I didn't really craft all the way up to the waistline because my ghillie's top kind of covers that. But you can see right here where I have some of that mil-spec netting, that's netting is sandwiched in some other camouflage material, and then it's sewn down right by, the top of my waist area. Here's now the front. I also have, there's another piece of fabric with the netting sandwiched in and sewn down just to kind of anchor it up on the front. I'm still able to access my pockets, even though I got netting, even though the netting's up here, I still can access and get into my pocket, and that's why I created that. The pants are basically the same thing. Mil-spec netting goes all the way down the back of the leg, and I used, let's see, you can see where some of my burlap pieces were attached. They've kind of just shredded apart, but looks really good. For me, I like it. It's very effective. Ask the people I play against or with. This ghillie suit is extremely effective, and I've had a lot of people kind of ask me what I've done to make my ghillie suit. So there's the pants. And if you got any questions or comments, if there's something you like me to elaborate a little bit more on, put them in the comment line. I can make another video too in regards to what you would like me to show more details of. But there's the pants. Again, I've used just different techniques. The front, I glue stuff down. On the back, I have my mil-spec netting where I was able to craft off of. I used some of that shoe goo to really secure down that netting onto my legs. So I tried a different way to secure the netting on my legs and it didn't work. And that the shoe goo works extremely well. So I highly recommend that type of stuff for, if you're securing netting down. There's the pants, there's the top. This is one of my mesh masks that I've made. This is the second one I made. The very first one I made is right here. I like these type of mesh masks, at least for my own personal preference. I like it that it has the padding over here, mesh in the front. I'm able to kind of craft off these. I use some digital woodland fabric, and I actually hand sewed it onto that padding, went through it, and secured it to the mask. This material helps to break up my my skin, cover my skin, but it also helps to give me a neck guard as well. Kind of adds movement, camouflages me, covers up my skin, but also acts as a, it deadens the blow. If a BB was to hit your neck, and if you had something like this, it's going to hit it and really slow the velocity of that BB down and not be as painful. So that's kind of why I do it as well. You know, neck guard, but also camouflaging. First mesh mask I made, second one, and then here's my newest creation, mesh mask. You know, I used, those first two masks I made, I secured the fabric down actually with a needle and thread. This one I wanted to try something different. I used Gorilla fabric glue, not the shoe glue. I first put down digital woodland fabric, and then I put the mil-spec netting over it and kind of secured it down, and then I'm able to craft off that mil-spec netting, added some of the larger netting pieces that I cut into strips. You can see how it's secured there with some yarn. And then I also kind of just got some jute material out of some of that burlap and added that also onto the mesh mask. And you can see how well that mesh mask works. And especially when it's paired up with my ghillie suit, you know, it's very effective. So those are things I've done. Hopefully you're able to, you know, get a couple ideas on maybe a route you'd like to take when creating a ghillie suit. So if you got any, again, if you got any other comments or questions, please put them in the comment line. If you like the video, give me a thumbs up, subscribe. I'll get some other videos out there. And besides that, you know, stay healthy, stay safe, and I'll see you on the battlefield or on the Trout River. So, see ya.